Welcome.
Yeah,
This is my guest, Emma Catague. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
thank you.
So,
Okay.
Emma, you have been doing anti-violence work for decades, and I just wanted to hear more about it.
I mean, I don't know where to start.
Okay, so were you with API Chaya?
I'm one of the founding mother of API. It was API Safety Center before they merged with Chaya.
How did it come to be about?
Well, on that time, there's series of murders going on in the Filipino community because of the domestic violence. And so we decided. The other thing also is I we noticed that there is no organization that provides services that is culturally appropriate. Whenever a victim, they don't actually go to the shelter that time because it's all mainstream. They don't understand the culture. So even though if we send them to them, they will only stay for a day or two. So we try to figure out why. And one of the thing is, oh yeah, they don't have rights. Oh yeah, they cannot practice the religion, and yeah, they have other people in the room. So I think because of that, they don't feel comfortable and safe being on the shelter. And so we decided to also create this API safety center. And the main reason we do is so that we can educate our community. So we studied the community education, organizing, also targeting the Filipino community because that time, every 2 years, we have a person that been killed. And so we studied with the Filipino community, work with the community leaders, other people within the community that interested to deal with that. Because again, that was 40 years, domestic violence is a taboo issue in our community. And so getting into that and working with the leaders, took us a while. But we use one of the things that was really very instrumental is the death of Susanna Blackwell, the lady that was killed inside the courthouse with the unborn baby and two other friends that was supporting her. So there's about four people that was killed inside the courthouse, and that was her husband who actually went there, shoot all of them. And that time, King County don't have the security, so all of a sudden, right after that, they installed the security, you know, things there. So that's how we started, and then of course, um, that time, even though most of the people who created the API Safety Center is Filipino, we decided that we want to include everybody. That's why we call it Asian Pacific Islander. Yeah. And then now it's merged with the Chaya. So it's EPI Chaya.
And how did you get into doing anti-violence work and advocacy?
I was a survivor of domestic violence. When I arrived here, I didn't know anything about it. Of course, because back home, this is something that we tolerate. It's like a part of, your day to day thing. And so I think when Susanna Blackwell was, killed, it down on me. So I left the situation, but I just keep it to myself. And of course, I didn't know there's no, culturally appropriate services that time. So, I don't know where to go. And I'm a newly immigrant here, don't know way out either. So I think I was while I was working at the Providence Hospital, one of the Filipina who works there notices me like every day. Either I'm, my eyes is pop, I have a bandage on my, like my arm. So she pretty much told me like, what's going on, and then she helped me to seek a lawyer. She said you need to get out of that situation. hmm But for a long time, I kept quiet because you know I feel shame because in our culture we don't talk about it. Yeah, and so
So
that's how
then,
I.
so how
Mhm.
did you become an advocate from there?
Well, I think when I start working at the international district, um, I see a lot of people that's going through, and I feel like I was helped because someone helped me, and so I want to get back. I feel like, okay, maybe I have to do the same thing. And so that's how I started and become involved through the creation of the API Safety Center, but also working in the community around community organizing, union organizing, immigrants' right. So it's all of that, come together. And I said, okay, I need to do something about it because in our community, this is a very taboo issue. No one wants to deal with that. But I see the process. I see that thing that every 2 years we have someone being killed because of domestic violence. And so that's how it started, and then from there,
Thank you
yeah.
for that and for all your work.
Thank you. Somebody has to do it, huh? We have to do
Right.
it.
Yeah. And I think it's important that survivors are doing it and are leading the work. Um,
Mhm.
I've heard some concern that folks are trying to save people, as opposed to, like you said, I can relate to that. Someone was there for me and I wanted to be there for somebody else. And, that's what's always motivated me in this work. That, and, the idea that if other people have the capacity to have a negative and harmful impact on us, either personally or on a larger scale,
Mhm.
then we too have power to influence the world. And so I think that's really important for us to remember.
Yeah, and I think we're just fortunate. I was fortunate to get involved in so many things because one is Velma Veloria. She used to be a state representative. And so, in terms of the policy level, we were able to change some. We were the first state who passed the law in human trafficking, you know. And so, I think the other thing also is when we start getting involved with the OCBA, I think that helps a lot also. That we were speaking out of what is need of our community. We become the voice of our community, and I think that was something that I really cherish, is that I was able to change some of those attitude within the state, and we were able to instill something in there that really benefits more survivor, more community that can speak for themselves. Yeah.
And are
So
you referring to community voices or
yeah.
other things outside of that as well?
I think one is the community voices because we were able to make changes and influence, and until now they are using that. So I think we did a lot. We worked a lot. It was not easy for us, but now looking back, I'm like, wow, we were able to be a troublemaker.
The good trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about community voices. What was it? And what was your experience with it?
What it is because we are all person of color. We were all mostly survivor and coming from different, like perspective, that we were able to work together. I mean, as an immigrant, as a native, as Latinx, I mean, different places that we've been, but also experienced differently. And we were able to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to hear our voices. And I think it was also good that they have like Gail Stringer, and I think she's one of the instrumental that talked to the OCBA to say, wait, we need to do this thing. And so, yeah, because of that, I feel like I was empowered by, wow, I didn't realize we can do something, to make it better for those people that can't speak for themselves. Yeah. So we become their
So,
voice.
so what are some of the things and changes that may have resulted?
Well, I think just letting them know, and that time, Bib Emery was so open about changes. This that culturally, linguistically, why is it important? For people that don't speak English, but also I think one thing that I think I also was very uh, happy is that when we changed the requirement for people to get a job. Remember, they always have like you all have to have a credential, you know. And I told them that what we're doing is we really exclude other, like us that don't have what do you call that? Like for me, I told him, I said, I don't have a credential. I did not finish college. And when every time I look at the requirement, minimum requirement, you have to have this and that. That itself, it's exclude me. So you are excluding people that have maybe expertise and knowledge and experience being a survivor, but because of the requirements, you're looking at people that, maybe just the college, they never have experience. So I said, I think we need to change it in terms of like and or, you know, have that credential and or experience, so that
Hmm.
you give the survivor an opportunity to become advocate, to have a job, because we can't get a job that time because of those requirements. And if you have a credential from your own country, most of the time they don't recognize her here in the US. Yeah. So that's the one that I think, I see it now. And I also mentioned that to the King County and the city, and I said, so at least for me, that's something that I can see that now we have a lot of survivor that able to get a job and become an advocate. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And in your experience, when you've raised issues like that, how is that received?
I think for the state, we were able to, because we are the group who did that. So it's not just me. I'm just one of it. I think it's part of the community voice,
Hmm.
uh, that I said. And Biv Emery was so open about it. I think she was willing to really do all these changes, because I also realized that she's also an immigrant that time. She's from Canada. And so when she told me that, and this is the other thing that we never see, is because she blended with them. I never thought that she's immigrant like us, you know, because she's white. And so when she said that, I think I was like, oh, okay. So now she's really looking into how can she make us changes on that. And she was able to do that because she's the one in charge of that. So.
Do you think the identities of folks in key positions of power is important?
Oh yeah, I think we need to have those people that have the understanding of what the needs of the community, and also to become an advocate. Yeah, I
Mhm.
know that, and that the city of Seattle, because of those the people that now in the position was also like us. They were
Mhm.
able to make some changes and even giving the money, how they give the money. So
Mhm.
right now we have this very unique funding that I'm actually doing, is the gender-based violence community mobilization. So the city of Seattle talked to me and said, well, Emma, I want you to do this. And I said, why me? Because you're the only person that we know that can do this. And it's like a pilot project about 7 years ago. And they said, you need to go to a different community and figure out how you can empower them using the one that me and Norma created, the natural helper model, to really educate, develop leaders within the community, because they're the best people that can do the work. And so they gave us the money, and I was able to get people, a community that never been, like Cham refugee, Cambodian community, that they will not be able to get to this kind of project. And I told Lon at the time, I said, if you want me to do this, I don't want you to tell me how to do it. Just give me the money, and we'll ask the community how they want to do it. And sure enough, that's what happened. So now it's becoming a regular, like a what do you call that? A project program of the city, and this is now the 7 years instead of 2 years pilot project. So this is something that I think that we need to let the funding sources to say, look, just give us the money, let us do the work, and no limitation. Sorry, my. Whew.
Take a minute. You've been involved at the state level as well through your work with Community Voices, but also you sat on the board of the Washington Coalition of Sexual Assault Programs for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think I do some of the advisory group within the state for sexual
Mhm.
assault. In other places that I've been involved with the state.
I want to ask you about um, your experience with WIXAP.
I think when I started, when I become a board member, I was the only person of color. They're all white, and I feel like I've been discriminated. They feel like I don't exist, and so I start being really like adamant about me. I'm here, and the other thing also is when we are studying with that board, if you are not in there, they don't care. And so every time we make a decision, I told them, I said, wait a minute. I said, well, there's some few people that's not here. I think we need to respect and listen and hear what they have to say because we're making a decision for this organization. So most of them, they look at me like, who are you or whatever. And so I keep insisting that. And then I actually raise it and say, you know what, you guys, I said, what attitude you guys have? I know at some point I yelled at them and then you look at me like I'm crazy. And then I also start talking about the diversity, anti-oppression lenses. Uh-huh. It was not easy, but I think at some point we were able to implement that. Uh-huh. And
So,
they,
yeah, go
they
ahead.
and they're starting looking for more person of color to be in the board then now to make sure that we have a representation of different community in that time. Yeah,
Mhm.
but that's how I experienced from the board. But also I think when I started in there's I think it was um who is that lady that was she's a white woman but strong, was able to at least provide those kind of thing. But then through the years that they changed the management, right now I hear that they don't even exist or something. I don't know.
It-
All the hard work that we did, just
They're
all gone.
still technically in existence, but they're being held together by a combination of domestic violence advocates and from what I understand, domestic violence survivors. And yeah, so they're in the process of trying to rebuild, from what I understand, but they're looking for sexual assault advocates to join. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I was involved with them for the longest time, because that's the only one I did not get involved with the Waskadab as a board member. But
mm,
being a member, I see, how the Waskadab is, better and have really a good, relationship with people, with the organization. But I think for some reason, for the Wixap, it's just like they never have a stable management
mm,
change. It's like, and I've seen that, see, but yeah. And then after a while, I think for the last 15 years, I was not involved. So I really don't know. But when I was involved with them, we tried all the hardest to make sure that the staff represent the community they serve, the management. In fact, we went through so many ED, and some of them are involved with the process, and they did not like me at one point because I refused to, agree with them to hire this person. That's why they ended up just getting those some staff to step up.
mm.
Yeah, but
So when you were on the board and you were advocating for like seeing things through an anti-oppression lens and diversity, uh, you said that people might have looked at you like you were crazy, but what changed? How did it go from resistance to okay, we're ready to look at things with an anti-oppression lens? If it ever did it?
yeah. Most of them resign. That's white people, they resign. They can't deal with me, so they resign. It's like,
Ah,
as I said, I was very, like aggressive, assertive, and saying, yes, we have to have this. Yes, we need to represent. We need more representation. And yes, diversity needs to be, yes. And they just, like, I think we have more argument in our meeting, but it's a good argument because, yeah, slowly we're getting more people of color, that's very outspoken. So, yeah, at some point, there's almost like, a person of color and, in the board. We get rid of all those people early on that they think about themselves like they know it all. And I said no. I said, what about those people that doesn't speak English? What are you gonna do about it? How do you represent all these people? You don't even have any idea. And so I think it was a good thing because it was more education. I've been looked like I've been educating them, and at some point they just go along with me because they cannot get rid of me, I guess.
So these days, more and more of the mainstream programs have have an advocate dedicated to a culturally specific community. What would you say to those programs that maybe have one person that speaks a language within the community, or is the go-to person for advocacy
Yeah.
with folks from culturally specific communities?
Well, that's the struggle that we have since the beginning because they will hire someone just because they look like them. And I told them, I said, I hope you guys didn't tokenize about these people. You don't just, like hire them just because you need to show that you are culturally sensitive. I said that's not how it is because oftentimes they get these people, that they don't even know their community. They don't even speak the language. And so I think that's still a struggle that we have that we'll have to continue to advocate for. I think they're getting better, but not to the point that we're happy about it because I know I have experience with KSARC with Mary Ellen Stone before, and that's what she tried to do is hire people or you know um, coordinate with other people like uh, people of color, small organization. Because we had one experience with a Native American, and I told the Native American, I said no. I said no. I said if you want, I will go with you with Mary Ellen because I'm gonna have to tell her no. If you want a partnership, it has to be a true, real partnership, not just by name, because they're just using your numbers. I think that's what it's always been, and I think all through this year, that's been one of our, struggle with this mainstream organization is they wanted us like, yeah, but then I always challenge them. That's why Mary Ellen, who's the other one? Lucy. Those people, Berliner, those people, when they see me, they're like, because they know they don't know what I have to say. Every time we go to a meeting, I say, no, I want to be there because every time that we don't have a representation, you guys never talk about our needs. Yeah. And so they were always, when we go to the meeting with the mayor, with that, I said, no, I have to be there. And then they always look at me because they never know what I have to say. They're afraid. But I'm very outspoken. That's why, I said they always think that I'm a troublemaker because I will put them on the spot. Yeah. So now that I'm retired, so they can do whatever they want.
What would you say to programs about what true partnership looks like or could look like?
I think the true partnership is really an equal footing. My attitude is okay, you want me to work with you, then recognize, not just, by name, but also in terms of funding. And I had this thing even when I was a peer reviewer for OVW. Every time I said, I read all this application proposal, and they will say, yeah, we were coordinate. I said, no, I don't want to hear about coordination. Coordination is different from partnership because you can coordinate with me, you will take all my numbers, but you will never compensate me. And so my attitude is the real partnership is acknowledge, recognize you are partner, and it has to be by name, by funding, name it all. And that's how I see it, because otherwise they're just using. A lot of them. And I feel bad because my experience, a lot of this small organization, they go in because they don't have funding, but then they get used, you know? And so it's not fair. You know? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, I've seen that and experienced it myself, where a program will call under a very tight deadline, and they'll be like, "Hey, we want to apply for this funding, and we want to partner with you."
Mm.
And actually, what it is they want us to do all the work, and they want to take all the credit.
And they just put your name. So I always told people, I said, make sure you have a written MOU, MOA, so that it is clear what your role is, what their role is. At the end of the day, you need to be compensated. I said, they're getting the money. They need to share it with you because they're getting your numbers. You're working hard for them. It's not fair. They get all the money and they all got the credit and you guys have nothing. It's not
Mhm,
fair. My
mhm,
attitude. But the other thing also is, how do you empower these people if you just use them? My attitude is, you need to empower them. At some point, they need to be on their own. They know their community better than anybody else. Why not give them that, you know, leadership? Allow them to run it themselves, and have the credit for themselves. I think that's how I see it. And yeah, I'm an organizer. I organize them. I, empower them because my attitude is they know their community better than I do. I'm here to support them, but I'm not gonna tell them what to do. So
So tell me more about your community mobilizing efforts. I think today, um, especially around like sexual assault prevention and violence prevention, that I think we've kind of reverted to what our idea of prevention is, in terms of it's awareness, it's sharing our contact information, and then but I think we've come some down the path in terms of like facilitating conversations that are getting people to critically think. But I'm interested in like revitalizing social change and community mobilizing. And so I would love to hear some about your experience with that.
well, we've been doing this. We call it natural helper model. When we started the API Safety Center, we don't have funding, so we rely on the community because I feel like the people in the community is the best. Uh, what do you call that? Resources you have. Money will come and go, but people will stay and will duplicate themselves. And so when we do that, we study that with API Safety Center, depending on the volunteers. But then we don't want to just say volunteers. So we want them to say, okay, you're a natural helper. Everybody is a natural helper. You're natural help. I am, because we do it naturally. Help people the way we are, and there is no description of how the natural helper can be. They have different roles to play. So when we started it, even the city of Seattle, that time, that was in the 90s, I think, or early 2000, we cannot get, in my new, there is no money focused on community organizing. Not before, not. Now we do, because their attitude is it has to be intervention. So I argue with the city and I said that long time ago, I said community organizing is a form of prevention. The more you come, the more we educate the people, the more we provide them the skill and knowledge, they will be the one that can prevent it because they live in their own community. They know their community better than we do. So that that's how we started it. And then we were able to just like, okay, we train them, we provide them training and culture, DB 101, just the basic understanding, so that when they encounter that in their own community, then they know how to respond. And again, remember, our community, we don't seek help, we don't call for help, but we go to our friends, church, community. So this is why we think like, train them, whoever, because they trust them, and they know better how to respond to that. And that's the kind of, that's the focus of this natural helper model that I've been doing. And the other thing also is, I said, again, I provide them some basic, and then I ask them, how do you guys want to go about it? You know, and not Native American, they have their own style approach. They use the sweet lodge, like talking circle, anything creative ways that you can do as long as you can have the conversation within the community. So that's how it is. Latinx is different, Cambodian community is different. So everybody have a different ways of approaching this. But the main thing is that these people are well respected in their communities. So when you have those people that have all this knowledge, they will listen. The community will listen. But if I go to your community, what are you gonna do? Who are you? Why are you doing this? And sometimes we're so arrogant about it. They're like, well, I want you to do this. Well, it's me, not you. So I always tell them, like, no, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to listen and help you, guide you. What could be, what other ways that we can talk to them. And again, every community is different. Some of this, they have a male dominant thing, so they don't look, they look down on women. So how do you even look at that? So there's a different approach, and it's not a one thing. It's not like a overnight thing. I told the city, I said, if you want me to do this work, give me at least 5 years. When you're doing community organizing, it takes a long time, diba? Because you don't just get it. You have to develop your trust. You have to be there for them until such time that they're willing. The other thing also that I do is that I don't impose what I want. Yeah, I want them to learn, understand about domestic violence, but that might not be their priority. So I will go in there like, okay, tell me, what is it? So when I was starting with the Samoan community, and I have questioned, is there domestic violence in your community? And of course, they said, well, yes, but. And so I said, well, what is it that you need? And they told me, like, Emma, I really want to have a parenting class. And I said, okay. I said, I'm not promising you anything, but I will do the best I could. So I connect, I call the people that I know, the drug and alcohol, in King County. And I said, hey, Jackie, um, can you help us in this? And so that time they were having this parenting class that was actually focused on prevention of violence. And so with that, I told him, I said, I would like to help this community because this is their priority. So I told that person, in his pastor wife, and I said, Mrs. Howe, okay, this one way I can help you, but you have to go to a training, an intensive training, so you become a facilitator, and we will pay you. So after that, then I asked another grant, person that I know, and said, hey, would you be willing to give them some money so that they can start this, parenting class? Sure enough, we were able to do that. And then I incorporate the gender-based violence in there, domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, name it all. So it's incorporated to that parenting class. And that's how it is. So that's one form that we did. And then you develop trust with these people because you actually focus on their need first before mine. But they never really realize that I incorporate those things within that. Yeah. So that's how I do with these people because I don't want to just go in there like, oh, we need to talk about anti-oppression. Oh, we need to talk about this because their level is not in there yet. We have to find a way to really, and for me, it's like, why are you talking about domestic violence? What I need is housing. Okay. So if I said, okay, I'll help you to find your housing, and then once you're settled, then you're gonna tell me, okay, Emma, I'm ready for you. What is it? So I mean, to me, that's the kind of approach I have. I mean, I'm all over, but it's just like different organization, different community, different approach, and really just to be there for them, just to provide them the resources they need until such time that they're willing and able to, once they trust you, they will be able to say, okay, I'm ready for you, Emma, tell me, what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm.
So
So
for anyone who does prevention work, but maybe hasn't veered into like community mobilizing, it sounds like what you're describing is having the skill of being able to first just show up and listen with open ears to take in, like you said, what people's priorities are, and then you used your connections to make things happen. And so it wasn't always about saying the right thing to enough people, that it was more around organizing and connecting the dots between the communities that we want to serve and listening to their needs and connecting them with resources.
Yes. And the other thing also is I have to tell them I'm not the expert. I don't want them to think that I'm the expert, even though I know what it is. But I said, no, maybe I'll bring somebody that can tell to you. So when we do the parenting class, when they said we want to talk about CPS, I go to the SHS and say, hey, I want someone from the CPS to come and explain to them. Because the other thing also why I do that is that then they see a face from that agency. So when they need, they don't have to come to me. They have to come directly and they develop that relationship already.
Mhm.
Because I'm always in the middle, and so that's one way also that I do is what do you want to know? Okay, drug and alcohol. Hey, I'm not an expert. I'll bring someone that can talk about it. And so I just sort of do that kind of a connection and facilitation. Uh, and I think to me it's like that's a better thing also because you actually empower this community to be self-sufficient so that they don't depend on me every day.
Mhm.
'Cause I
Mhm.
can't all. So that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, what kind of like broader social changes have you seen since you've started doing this work? Like have our collective efforts made any difference in the world?
I think we do, but I think again it comes in different ways and different forms because uh they are coming from different level, their experience, back home and here. So when we talk about those like social change, how do we start even talking about discrimination? They don't understand, most of them, or anti-oppression or racism, and so we have to like do it in a small way. Like I think what we do is we try to touch them how to become involved in the policy level. Mm, that's one way. We always said, okay, for your community, we need to go to Olympia and talk to our legislature regarding this issue because it will impact you, it will affect you. And then how can you support? How can you protect your community? How can you provide them this unless you have a good understanding? So I think that's one way that I do is like really get them involved because in their country it might be a different thing. They also have a bad like a experience with immigration, like police, so when they come in here they avoid those people and they always have the same, yeah, what is the notion. And we do the same thing with the law enforcement and ICE. It's like how do you deal with this population, you know and so, and I don't know if I'm answering your question because we have different ways of doing it. um, Social change is a huge thing, even like for us. Even translation, interpretation have an impact. How do we treat people, or even like police brutality, all kinds of things. Like where do you really can get uh, culturally relevant services. Who are the people that can actually understand you or protect you or willing to go beyond so that they can make everybody get what they need. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but social change is a huge thing. Even me, as I'm still understanding, because there's always something going on, and so people have a different perspective, and so you don't want to offend them. That's the other thing. Also, is when I was working with the Somali. community, and woman is separate with the man. And so when I'm looking at her, like, so what are we gonna do? And so I have to follow them. I said, oh no, yeah, we cannot have men and women at the same room. So it has to be separated, and then the man has more power than the woman. So we have to figure out a way. Okay, and sometimes it's good when you're an outsider because you can be clueless, you can be crazy. So sometimes I tell them like, oh, do you want me to talk to them? Because they cannot offend me. The men cannot offend me, but if it's their own woman, they probably scream and yell at them. So I just told the woman, how do you want me to approach them? Mhm. But I think because of that, then you can also empower the women. Like, oh, okay, I guess we can, but really, it has to be within their culture because you don't want to offend them. Mhm.
I
That
want to
makes sense.
highlight I want to highlight that what I'm hearing from you sounds like, and it's touching because I don't know that we see it enough, but that it's deep listening and respect.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
Respect.
too often uh folks will for the sake of diversity or diversity of perspective, they'll invite someone to participate or to join in a conversation or a group or an activity, um, and ask for input and then totally disregard the input or minimize or push it away. And so what you're describing, I think we need more of it. People that are just listening, deep listening, and respecting what we're hearing from folks and figuring out a way to follow their lead and to encourage them to lead.
Mhm. Yes, yes. Because like to me, it's like I don't want people to tell me what to do.
Hmm.
So I have to do the same thing. If I don't like it, then why would I do it? And so respect and really listening. I mean, you gotta have a good listening skill, and it's hard. Well, some people have, there's some people that they think they know it all. Some people that they have a higher education, they think that they can say whatever they want. And I think for me, we need to step back. It don't matter if you have PhD, if you have doctorate. You need to look at the person. And as you said, we have to respect, listen to them because their perspective is different from us. And if we want to support them or help them, then we need to go down to their level. you know, you cannot say, well, I'm a doctorate, I'm a PhD, but who cares? If you're going to a community that you don't understand their community, it don't matter if you have a PhD. And so I think that's something that I think for me, I really work well with the communities. I don't go in there like I am going home. I am this, I come in there like, hey, I'm here because I want to support you guys in some way. And, really, just listen to them, you know. And I think sometimes it's a better way because then they're more open and they don't feel like they are being, used. Because a lot of time, that's another thing is I always told all those the mainstream organization, I said one thing I hate is when you use this community. You cannot do that. You gotta respect them. You gotta listen to them. It's a fair share. You want to help them, then do a fair share. Give them the money, allow them to to advocate for themselves and not control them. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, what does it look like um, to let community lead? Like what is it that agencies specifically can do to support communities and mobilizing and making change happen? What's our role in it?
Well, I think it is something that is hard, I think, but if you're willing to do it, you can do it. If you're in the power, I think you have that responsibility to make sure that you go to the community and, as you said, we have to respect them, listen to them. It's so interesting because when I was asked by the city and saying, Emma, I have an extra money. What organization, what community would you like to? And I've been working with the Cham refugee. Okay, Cham refugee is sort of like a very small community and nothing. They don't have any kind of support from the government. Very little. So, and I know they were struggling. So I call and I told the city, I said, I would like to focus on Cambodian and Cham refugee because they never have a gender-based violence, like program. So they gave me money, $45,000. Okay, $45,000 is a drop in the bucket, but at the same time, it's a thing. It's something that they can start. So when I talked to Cham refugee, she was surprised. She said, "Emma, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money." And they're like, "No, it's not." And then I said, "And here it is. What I would like is to sit down with you and talk about how do you want to use this money in terms of the gender-based violence." And you know what? She chose youth, middle schooler, and high schooler. And I like, wow, because she feel that that's the most important thing that they have for now is to really get into that group. And so I said, okay, fine. I said, so just let me know how I can support you and what are the things that you need. And I tell you that group now is expanding. But the good thing is that they're not these young people that understanding the gender-based violence and how to be safe and everything. They're the one that talking to their parents. Because one of the things that we have challenges is we cannot talk to the elders. One, we cannot talk to the elders and we cannot talk to the parents about gender-based violence. Yeah, because they're very male dominated, and then of course the woman's supposed to be oppressed. And so they use the kids. And so to me, it's like one way to really do is if we have the power and if we have the money, then let the community lead it. We'll just need to support them, guide them. What do you guys need? And that's my role now is just to lead them. Okay, I'm their consultant, I'm their advisor. So I just said, okay, they come to me and I call them, check them out. Hey, how are you guys doing? And so now that's how it is. So the Cambodian community, they don't have an organization. They created their organization, group of women that really the focus is this. And so we have this thing like, well, do you want to be a nonprofit or is it, so my advice is like, well, right now maybe it's not appropriate for you to focus on being a nonprofit because you only have this much money. And so we just need to say, do this, train everybody about gender-based violence, develop that relationship with the community, and then we'll see in the future. And I said, I also let them know that we need to look into other funding. So here I am. I'm just like sort of, not, I'm always in the back, but providing those because my attitude is if we have the power, we have the connection, then we need to lead them to that and how. So we just have to guide them. So a lot of the fun, I mean, I don't know because I don't see, and maybe because I'm not really involved anymore, I don't see a lot of organization that's still connected, grounded with the community. Some of this organization that we have becoming an institution because why? Because of the funding they get. They don't have a lot of connection relationship in person anymore. It's all like computer, Zoom, like what are we doing now? Before we hang out, remember?
Yeah.
And so that's how I wanted to do is I still connect with them, like, hey, we wanna so I have people, the whole group, I have 5 different community. Quarterly we meet, face to face, have just, lunch, dinner, and then update. What are you guys doing? And then you really develop that relationship that they become resources of their own. They can connect with each other. Doesn't matter if you're Latinx, Native American, African American, Filipino, all that. They have different culture and approach, but at the end of the day, they have the same problem that they have to deal with. And so they learn from each other. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get you to talk. That's all. Doesn't matter if you answer my questions exactly or not, but you're doing great. I have
So
so many more questions just like popping up in my head. So one of them would be for like you talked about in the when you were beginning API Safety Center that you didn't have much, if any, money. So for programs that make choices between doing support services and prevention work, what would you say to them about the cost of organizing community mobilization, doing prevention work with communities?
I can say, I think if we really want to support the community, we need to put the money into it. That's one. But the other thing also is when we started the API Safety Center, me and Judy, for 3 years, we run it voluntarily. And so whenever I go to a community and said, hey, we need to do this, we need to do this, the first thing they told me, like, but Emma, we don't have the money. And I always told them, I said, if you depend on the money, you will never be able to do something. I said, money will come at some point. Because I said, we did it. Me and Judy Chen, we run API Safety Center for 3 years. I'm on my basement. She's on her attic. I'm developing the program. She's focusing on getting some of the money. But because we were so committed, we did what we have to do. And that's the reason why we created a natural helper, is because that's the only way that we were able to run it, is to depend on the volunteers. But we need to respect them also. And so I think, and I don't know if I'm answering you, but my attitude is really, if, they wanted to do this work, I think the funding sources really have to be serious about just giving the money. And I'm so fortunate because the city of Seattle, we have those people that we used to work with us that was in the position now. And they were the one that are actually pushing for it. Yeah. And so King County, I think, is starting to, but the state, I mean, we have a lot of work to do because we are not doing anything anymore that we used to do. And we don't have the strong advocate that we have in the past that's very passionate about work that we do. So I think for me, that's one of the big things. Every time they ask me and say, give us the money, put more money into this. If you really wanna, maybe we will not eradicate the whole thing, but it might change some of that. Prevention, I said. Prevention, not so much of intervention, because if you started with the prevention, you don't have to intervene. You don't have this kind of problem that's going to be arise. Because you have the community to protect themselves. You have the community that have all the knowledge and expertise that can protect them own people. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's how I look at it. It's like, give the money. And I always told the funding, I said, oh yeah, gender-based violence is the priority, but when it comes to money, they're on the bottom. I said, why is it? And I said, because a lot of these men, a lot of these people who make a decision, they're all men. you know unless we change this whole thing. I don't know, I'm just, when I get into that, I was just like, yeah.
What you referred to, you made a statement that that there's work that we used to do that's not happening so much anymore. Do you want to talk more about that?
Because if you look at it, remember when we were part of the community boys? I
Mhm.
mean, we do a lot in our own community. I know you did a lot, when you work with the street kids, and all of that. Remember, you
Mhm.
know, we do the work even though we don't get paid a lot. And I think that's the difference, is when, as I said, we're so passionate about it. We're committed to make changes. We do everything. We were fortunate that time that we have connection with the OCBA, the WICSAP, and all that. That even though we don't influence them 100%, we make some changes in that. But tell me now, who are the people that doing the work that we do in the past? No one. But look what happened to WICSAP. Why? You know? I think Waskadab is good because Judy Chin is the one that in there that really, have that continuation. But WICSAP, they don't have that. For some reason, they're more of like, I don't know how I say that, they're not grounded, they're not community driven, like that's just their job, and that's the other
Yeah.
thing now.
Yeah.
People like, well, it's just about job. When we were doing it, this is not a job. This is our life. It's
Yeah.
the whole,
Right.
so that's
Yeah,
why.
my own experience with WIXAP, I mean, my son just turned 23, but when I was pregnant with him, I asked if I could bring him to work, after he was born for 6 months, just for that attachment. And being a feminist organization, I thought that that would be okay.
Mm-hmm,
But it wasn't. And so that's why I ended up leaving the coalition. And within a year, their assistant director and their staff attorney, both white women, got pregnant. And within a year, there was an in office nanny and daycare center.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing also is that I think we make a point on that time that um, they have to look at how to support the family, and I think that's a struggle for a lot of us, single parents. I mean, I was single parents at that time also. That, but when we created API Safety Center, that was something that we can bring the kids. So we bring kids in there. I mean, we take turns of taking care of it because some of our staff is also survivor. I mean, a lot of us, most of us is single parents. And so for us to be able to work, we need to provide this kind of support. And I think right now, I mean, I don't see any. I mean, I think when COVID, everybody was so happy because they don't have to leave. They just stay home and they get paid. Okay, that's a whole different thing. And I think that's the other thing also now is so different. I don't know. I mean, really, I mean, I don't see anyone like us doing this, continue to do this work. Only few of us. Mm-hmm.
I'm just checking the time real. All right, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is all great. I really appreciate it. Oh, before I forget, I reached out to Arlene Red Elk, and asked her if she would be open to being interviewed, and she actually would love to get together with everyone from Community Voices. So if you would be open to that,
Oh,
I can try
yes.
to figure
I
something out.
I think we should because that's been so long, and I think just seeing each other because I know Arlene. I work with Arlene because I work with the Native American, the Mother Nation, and she's one of the person that actually continues to lead that as a board member and doing all the training with Noreen. Yeah, I mean and I know she's getting old also. That she's very frail. So yeah, I mean I don't know who else that this is existing because Gail is gone, you
Yeah,
know?
but so I am in communication with Lydia Guy,
Oh,
and who else? I haven't reached out to her yet, but Debbie Hessler from Cowlitz. Do you know her?
yeah. Me and
If
her,
there's anyone else that you can think of that was a part of that group, those are the folks that I can remember. And Anne McGettigan, I interviewed, although I don't think she was a part of Community Voices, but or maybe she was. But
yeah,
Anne,
I know I'm just, that was a long time ago. And even me, I'm getting old, so I can't think of, like, I mean, like, wow. Yeah, who else? It'd be nice if, even though it's not, but, I think Bev Emery would be a
oh
good,
yeah,
but I don't know where she at now. I'm thinking like, then how can we move forward? Who are the people that, because we need to figure out a way. I mean, this is always my concern is like, once we stop. It has to continue. So we need to look into how the young generation that have the same passion, and it will be
yeah.
difficult.
They put out a report, I think it was in 2021, about community voices. It goes through like what the purpose of Community Voices was, that it stopped at some point, but the current staff weren't really sure why, even though I tried to tell them. My recollection of it was that it was during the Obama recession that the state was told to cut all advisory groups and committees to save money in the budget. But that was around 2009, I think.
Yeah,
And do you
I,
remember?
yeah, I don't think it's Obama. I think it was, like the Bush, because everybody, I mean, okay, in Clinton, we have all the money in the world that we were able to. And then after that, that's when it say, well, we don't have this. That's why we even cut everything. Like we used to do all the sexual assault court training for
Mm.
specific, and that got cut off because there is no more technical assistant money. So I don't know if it's Obama, even if it does, because that time we don't have money anymore. The Bush took all the money and spent it all, and that's the reason why we're in this situation now. Is there's no more money. All the money they pump into the military, so social service and all of that. But I remember, in Clinton, we have all the money in the world because there's so many services. There's so many program that was created, and that how it, and there's so much money in OCBA that they can do those, all we created all of this. But the other thing also I think is, the way I understand is the community voice is something like just a one-time thing that we were asked to go out to the community and do the survey or talk to them, but we never really have, and I might be wrong, that how to go move forward on that, you know just I think
Well,
we were
I know
it.
we were meeting fairly regularly. Maybe it was quarterly, but I
Mhm,
remember we were having discussions about um, um, oppression and all the different ways that it manifests.
mhm,
And I remember that we were talking right before it ended. We were having conversations using this metaphor of like a pond in a field and the ecosystem of it, and we were using pieces of that picture to try to articulate how the state and mainstream programs can be in better relationship and more supportive of culturally specific communities. Does that ring a bell at all?
kind of, yeah. Because I think we were really talking about, yeah, I mean, how people of color can, at least equally with them, but I don't know what happened. I mean, I think that's when we stop.
Yeah. Well, so OCVA's report, page 9, is we apologize.
To check on that. Is that the 2021? Because the one that we have is the long one, the old one. That's the only one that I
Yeah,
have report.
yeah, I can send it to you.
So
Yeah,
is this
there's a
one
20. It was just from OCVA, and it was just a recap of what
really?
their understanding of community voices was, and then what recommendations were implemented, and then
Mm.
what recommendations were just never, you know, they were never picked up and ran with.
Yeah,
I thought it was interesting to note that the one recommendation that they didn't really talk about was that any increase in funding, this should be frozen until funding for culturally specific services was brought up to par. And that never happened. And as a matter of fact, from what I remember, the earmarked money for community voice for culturally specific community services was 10% of the state budget. And that my understanding is that it's currently 9%.
so it's going down instead of going up because we want to increase that actually, and we work hard on that to get that 10%. Yeah, and so it's going down. And so
But
I my question is then, who in OCBA actually put this, together for 2021?
The current staff at OCBA. But so Stephanie's not there, Bev's not there. Basically, there was a change in both leadership and staffing over the last decade or so that it seems like a lot of institutional memory's been lost.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is that who are these people that, make this? To me, it's like I will question them because they don't have the history to start with. So how did they come out of this, like recommendation, if they don't even bother to come to us before they come out of that? You know what I'm saying? You know,
Mhm.
so they're just reading what the recommendation in the past and assuming. So they're just interpreting it the way they want to interpret it, not necessarily how we think that came out of it, the
Mhm.
explanation. I mean, I will question them. You know me, because it's our work. It's our work, and now they're the one that's analyzing it how without even checking on us. Because if it's 2021, I'm like, wait a minute, we did the OCB, the boys, for how long already? That was in the early. When was that?
I think it started in some iteration in the late 90s, and then
Yeah,
it morphed into community voices.
yeah. So for them, 10 years after or 20 years after, they will come out of this recommendation or analysis that how did they look at this is how they look at it just by reading the book. Is that what it is? I mean, I want to question them because if they are new staff that don't have the understanding of our background, our history, how we came about, I mean, I will challenge them.
Well, what's happening right now at the state level is that OCVA is looking at they've contracted with a company to do like a field wide assessment, get input from the field about um, potential changes to the funding structure. So they're looking, from what I understand, they're looking at not having necessarily different funding streams. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know that right now they're asking the field for input over the next year or so.
Wow, they're really becoming more mainstream thing. I mean, there's a reason why we created the funding the way it is, so that make sure that not all this money will come to the mainstream. Remember the CSAP? Okay, if you're not part of the CSAP, you cannot get the money, and that's
Mhm.
the reason why we created this marginalized community. It is separate to that, so that because they don't want to share that to us, and that's
Mhm.
why there's a we have a huge discussion around it at the King County, because again we were not part of the CSAP, and so because of that we cannot do, but they want us to do the work. So we created something, and it was like a battle had with Mary Ellen and Lucy Berliner, all these white people, you know because they are the biggest one, like the KSARC, the Hexat, they are those part of the CSAP. And so all the marginalized community, we were not part of that. And that's the reason why the OCBA created that certain percentage has to be taken away from them. And they were not happy about it. So that it is specific for us. So now, because we have marginalized community, Native American, and CSAP. Okay, now you're telling me they're gonna eliminate those? What's gonna happen? We're just
I,
gonna be fighting each other. All the work that we've done in the past, boom. See, I mean that's how I look at it. It's like there's another fight, and no one's gonna fight for it anymore because we are gone. We don't have.
well, I'm trying to revive community voices. So
Yeah,
it's a matter of making the relationships with folks so that they see the value in spending time, taking time out of their crisis driven days to meet with colleagues and talk about some important things.
yeah, and maybe we can also think about how can we replace ourselves? How can we mentor young people so that they can continue the work that we started, because I don't want to see it lose or gone, because we're going back to in the 60s, like we don't
Yeah.
have that, we don't have, like all the power that we have now, or not really the power, but just the accessibility on that. We're gonna start fighting again. So I mean, all the hard work that we did, I don't want to see it lost, but how can we even get young people, you know uh, interested on what we've done in the past? That's
Well,
a
that's in part why I started this project, because I was online looking through doing some research about available trainings, and I came across a training that was entitled History of the Movement. And so it gives a timeline of the work that has happened over the last couple of centuries. But I found it really interesting that it really skipped over, for the most part, the last 40 or 50 years. And and it, like, the training literally ends with these words: hard work and courage of countless women led to the establishment of rape crisis centers and advocacy as we know it today. You may draw on this history as you encounter the difficult work of advocacy, and as you support survivors, educate your community, and dream of new approaches to ending sexual violence. You can be a part of a movement, and your voice is an important one. We've come a long way, and we continue to struggle with the legacy of challenges. Within our field, the establishment of rape crisis centers brought large numbers of middle-class white women into political activism.
Mhm.
Although women of color were pivotal, I always have a hard time with this word. Although
It's
women of color were pivotal in this history, their efforts and struggles were largely invisible because of racism within and outside of the movement.
that's true.
And that's how the training ends. And I
Wow.
thought, this cannot be. Like, the work that you've done, that Gail did, that Lydia's done, that so many people working in culturally specific communities have been doing for the last 40 years. I mean, you have been leaders and pioneers of doing this work, and to just have all of that just said, well, we know that it was really important and they were leaders, but we don't know what the hell they did. So time to
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah.
And I just thought, man, if there's anything I can do before I exit this earth, I want to help leave a record of all of the powerful people that I've known that have done amazing work in changing the world and helping people to heal their lives and their communities.
Yeah, and it's so interesting when you read it, because the shuttle rape relief, when it's disbanded, that's how we start. Because when that is gone, all these people are looking for services, and that's why we ended up the API Safety Center. We're only supposed to start with the community organizing, and we ended up doing all this direct service because the community, there's a need, and that time the shuttle rape relief is closed. So we ended up doing all this and not getting paid at, because we know, and that's when we start, like talking to everybody. And yeah, where they struggle with the CISA people, because their attitude is they don't want to share their resources with us, but they want us to do the work, and they want them to get the numbers, you know. And so I think that's when you can, this is where you can start, like, okay, actually, after shuttle rape relief, this is how what happened. And that's what you said, that's missing, is that because we're so focused on responding to the needs, we were not even able to, well, we don't have the time to say, oh, wait a minute, we need to talk, we need to process, oh, we need to, continue writing this. And that time also, no one is the one. But yeah, I mean, Lydia is part of the shuttle rape relief. I mean, we were just getting into that. And so even for me, it's like the history, and I'm learning, and like, oh, really, But at the same time, we're just really responding to changing and, like policy within the state, but responding to the needs of the, community. So here we are, we're like going all over, and we don't have time to focus on this, writing the history of it. But
Mhm.
I think you might be able to, when we had this conversation, is this is the continuum of this. Mm-hmm.
What do you know about Seattle Raper Leaf closing down?
I mean, it's like bits and pieces because that time I was not paying attention. All I'm doing is like, okay, I have to respond to sexual assault in my community, and then there's become this political thing. So I hear this, and that. I, I I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's the funding. I don't know, but it was already disbanded when I, start working in there. They were just saying that the reason why this increase of needs in the community is because Seattle Rape Relief does not do anymore. And I said, I think Lydia might have a better understanding because I think she was involved. She
Yeah.
was. I never asked what happened. I just, like whatever I heard, because
Well,
it's
I,
conversation.
because I was a volunteer there. That's
Oh.
how I got into this work in '94. I went through their training, and it changed my outlook on life. They did
Mm-hmm.
this they did this exercise as part of the training where all of the volunteers in training, um, we had to play this interactive game, and they had set up the office at like it was different stations, like housing or food
Uh,
stamps or all of that. And so we had to go through and try to get our needs met. And while we were doing this, the staff were going around and they would like pull somebody out of line and stick them in the end of the line, or they would like insinuate that they wanted a bribe, so like their watch or something, and then they'd take them to the front of the line, or they would randomly pull somebody out and take them to jail. And we
mhm.
could not figure out, like, why are they picking on me? Like, why am I in jail now? And Patricia Flores was also in that volunteer
Oh,
training, so we went through it together. That was amazing. But we were so confused, and so afterwards we were made aware that they had like picked some random things like the color of your shoes, or whether or not you wore eyeglasses, and that was how they determined who they were going to pick on. And it was then that I like had this realization that all of these experiences that I had had with racism and sexism and all of that, it wasn't about me. And that like changed everything for me. But
yeah.
going back to Seattle Rape Relief, is I really think that their undoing had to do with creating a structure of funding,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that programs started to become more professionalized. And as such, they were expected to abide by certain activities, right? Like you should be there for victims, to respond to victims, um, and you can do classroom education, but if you want to like do community organizing and like larger social change, I think that there started to become this division
Yeah.
between those two, and Seattle Rape Relief was really good, I think, about continuing to do both of those. And I think that they got a lot of pushback, from what I understand, from other organizations that were like, look, if you guys want this funding, or the city, if you all want this funding, then here's the expectation, and it's very narrow. And if you want to talk about social change, and like gender norms and things like that, that's too much.
Cannot do that that time. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think probably, yeah, because what I also understand is most of the people who work there is sort of like an activist, like, us, that, well, go, shake the boat, and all of that. And I think, as I said, if you look at some of the organization now, they're institutional because of the funding, you know, and so I think, yeah, and that's why. So when they did that, then everybody, there's all this thing going on in the community, because no one is providing services anymore. So we have to pick up, pieces. And of course, CSAP, they don't care because they already have their own, and they only focus on certain. Yeah, there's a lot. Even Norma Timbang, me and Norma, we were outcast by by those people because we always challenge them, question them. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's good. I'm glad to hear from you that perspective, because again, I heard about it. I know that they closed down, but I never really get a sense of what happened. Mm.
Well, there
How?
was an article that someone, I believe she was affiliated with Seattle Rape Relief, and then she went on to start CARA, Communities
Oh,
Against Rape and Abuse.
Elisa, what's her name? Is that?
Uh, I'm not sure. It could be, but I can
Yeah,
send you the article too. I think it's entitled "The Revolution Will Not Be Funded" or something to that effect.
I think, yeah. There's two of them. Yeah, that was I started the Kara. Yeah,
Hmm.
because we were sort of when the shuttle rape relief gun, and then all of us become sort of the group, the API Chaya, and that, and we work together because they're the one that are actually providing those training, being advocate or activist thing. I think because, and I think that's another thing is that time funders, they don't like people, you know, shaking the boat.
Mm.
So yeah, because as you said, even that, when they are becoming so activist and questioning them because they don't want to follow, the funding sources, requirement. And so now it's changing, but it takes a long time. Yeah.
I was in a conversation with a colleague who we were having a conversation about how do we change white supremacy culture, and the question was raised about how do we have these conversations with partners that don't want to have the conversation. And I interpreted that to mean folks who are working within systems who like are totally fine with the way things are now. Like they don't want the boat shook. So how do we shake the boat without knocking everybody out?
Yeah. Kick them out. I think this is really, the hard thing is that we've been trying to change policy, but every time we change, and then it changed the whole thing. And so I think one, we need to get rid of all those people that making the policy, or creating the policy that does not even like looking at the whole picture of the community. Because even the community, there's no, before it was just like four major minority group. you know when we were starting in the 80s, we have Hispanic, we call it Hispanic, we call Native American, African American, and API. But now they're not the only minority group. You have all, people that coming from different country because of the war. Now you have already refugees, and the refugees, South Asian. I mean, all these things is all of a sudden we were like, okay, so now how do you define people? You cannot say it because then you are oppressing them or you are offending them. A lot of them now that we have like European, refugee. How do you, deal with that? When we said before, the refugees only what? Southeast Asian people from Vietnam, Cambodia, now that doesn't even, part of it. Now we having all kinds of, refugee from different country. So this really like, even if we're talking about it, that's gonna be like crazy. But something has to happen. Because, like, I know you remember Minority Executive Director Coalition. We had that in the 80s, and I think it got disbanded also in the last 15 years ago. And that was the biggest coalition that we have, because those four major minority group is part of that. And so when we trying to revive that, we have a conversation with young people and other, community from different, like country. You cannot use that the name anymore, and you have to expand it because I said you cannot. How do you define immigrant? How do you become define, like a, like refugee? And how do you look at the undocumented people? Can, because it's not just before assume people like undocumented is just coming from Mexico. No, it's not. It's all over. There's so many. We have so many Filipinos that's undocumented. So the oldest thing now is how do you define all this? But how do you even create that funding sources that can? Because now I always said, what the funding sources do is they throw the pie and all of us, and it's up to us to divide this. We're the one that have to fight for each other instead of the funding said, okay, I'll give you this and that. And I always tell that to the funding. I said, what you guys do is you want us to fight each other. That's your job to give us how do you allocate it. But your attitude is you want to clean your hand. You guys fight and argue, whoever, get and that's what is happening because there's not a lot of money, but the needs are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. May make sense? I don't know where
Yeah,
I'm.
yeah, absolutely. So I was recently in a conversation where somebody used this term that I had never heard before. So I looked it up. The global majority. Have you heard that before?
No.
So it's recognizing that white folks only make up a small portion of the global community, and yet it's all of the rest of these groups that are marginalized, right? And so this term global majority, for me, it really, like, it kind of changed the way that I see us collectively, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my God, we're in the majority, right? We don't all have to be alike, but we have a similar shared experience of what it means to be marginalized. Which reminds me of another conversation I had recently with some folks in a mainstream sexual assault program, and the idea of the sexual assault service standards came up, and
Mm-hmm.
I was because of the way this contract that we're working under to provide TA and technical assistance in place of WICSAP right now. The way that it was structured was that each program has or each contracted agency has a particular focus, right? So they focus on child-centered programs, or the focus on CSAPs, or my focus is working with the culturally specific um, providers. And so anyway, we were having this conversation about the service standards, and I kept bringing up there's the service standards that are specific for working in culturally specific programs, which, as you know, has historically been called marginalized and Native American communities funding. And so using that terminology of marginalized services, the somebody made the comment to me, "Oh, I didn't realize that there were marginalized service standards." And I said, hence the word marginalized.
Yeah, we did that. We changed all those service standard. Mm-hmm. But and even if you look at it, why do we still call it marginalized?
We're in the process of changing that right now. We've been having that conversation.
Is it
So
gonna be what BIPOC?
now it's going to be culturally specific.
I
That
think that's a better one
Yeah.
because even marginalized. I mean, we having argument with that. Like, yeah, we're always called marginalized. Why? You know? Yeah, that's
It's a
good.
tool of marginalization, and that's why.
But it's so interesting because when you talk about the global majority, it's really true. Because even for us, when we talk about oppression, when you see the certain of margin. I mean, remember we were saying only 10% of the population has the power to control the 90% of people. Why? And that's always my question that, can you think about it? Look at us. We're the 90%. But why can't we even control the 10%? Because the 10% has the power. They're all this billionaire, all this, like have the power to make changes. That's what I'm saying. Is like, it's really, if we look at it, how do we analyze that? There's 90% of us. Why can't we change the whole thing? This 10% still have the power and control over all of us, the resources and everything. But anyway, I just want to like, wow, it's gonna be more, but we still allow these people. And look, you never know what's gonna happen to this election. Shit. Oh, sorry.
So don't get me started on that.
I know, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, here we are. We're 90%. What can we do to make the changes? I mean, we've been working on this funding sources about gender-based violence for the last how many years? 50 years. We
Well, I think
still.
that's the value of bringing communities together, like with community voices, being able to talk about how is my experience similar to yours, or what can we learn from these shared experiences so that we can support each other in pushing for change, and to not getting derailed when
Mhm.
when we individually push for change and then get ignored, or explained why that's not going to work, or
Mhm.
what somebody else's mistake was that isn't going to allow us to take in your recommendations. It's like a lot of excuses. So for me, I get frustrated. It's like it takes a lot to speak up, and then to have that, like, told, oh well, we can't do that, or we meant to do that but we didn't, but we'll do it next time. That's just like, oh.
Yeah. And even me, I'm sick and tired of listening to that. There's always excuses, just to avoid us, just to avoid talking about it because they don't want to talk about it. And so I think for us is, yeah, we need to figure out how to push for it, how to make the changes. mm, yeah,
Yeah.
in the policy, but also within the department, because as you said, you have all these new people that don't have the history, don't have the understanding how it came about, but they're the one now in the decision making position you know hmm
Well, I
so
want to respect your time, so I have one last question for you, and that is, what do you want what do you want to say to today and tomorrow's advocates?
oh my god. uh I think I would like to tell them that they really have to be more, how do you say that? I mean, the commitment, the passion, but also being aggressive or assertive, and to really continue the struggle that we have to make the changes. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I mean, looking at us and looking at them now, there's not a lot of people that have the same passion that we have. And so my hope is that as an advocate, they can really look into what happened in the past and what they can do to continue that, to make changes and to make it better for everybody. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, it's not just a 9 to 5 job. I guess my attitude is it
Yeah.
is part of your life.
I am so grateful to know you, Emma, and I really appreciate you meeting with me today and sharing. And um, thank you so much for everything that you've done to make this world a better place.
Thank you also, because we're all in this world. We're all in this job. I mean, I had an opportunity. I'm also really thankful for you because I had an opportunity to work with you. All this thing that we have the struggle and listening to the frustration that we have. Hopefully, we can do a better, life for some people. But I know you still continue to do what you're doing, and I'm also thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing. So good to
It's
see
my
you.
honor. And like the best part of this work has been working with folks like you and Gail and Lydia and so many others. And the time that we spent together, like really listening to each other and supporting one another, that helped me to come back into my community and continue to push for change, even though everybody in my community was like, what are you doing? So
Yes.
knowing fellow folks that are just as passionate like yourself it gives me a boost, and it's helped me to continue to do this work. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, wow. And think about it. It's just like so amazing that we are continue to do this work to make our world better. But yeah, my dear, it was really look good to see you. You look really good. Maybe because before you're so skinny and young, you look, you're more happy, and I think. Uh,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
well, thank you also. So hopefully, I look forward for us to having a reunion.